Attention, you lovely, lovely bastards, and welcome to the Solar Aux Cable episode of the Large Blast podcast. I am your host, Stoney, and I'm joined as always by Welshie.
Ken Hut.
And Matt.
New Army.
And we like to get things kicked off with something we call Hobbies Goings On, where we take a look at what's been going on in the Hobbies Hosts Live. So, Matt, do you want to kick us off? What have you been up to?
Yeah, I'll kick you off. My 6-month no-buy Games Workshop products came to an end yesterday with the pre-orders for Warhammer the Old World. Got my pre-order in, and that now kicks off my new 6-month no-buy from Games Workshop, because I'm not going to buy anything else for at least another 6 months. Yeah, pre-ordered the Bretonian.
It's funny to watch a pile of shame expand in real time like this. I feel like if you go back through the episodes, you can literally watch you can listen to a man not quite getting through his pile of shame and desperately trying not to grow it. But here, there's been a fumble, 6 months clean, and now suddenly a slip.
But now it's a perfect excuse to do another 6 months. On the modelling front, I assembled my first fully metal model for ages, another Bretonian, but the horse is metal. So the entire model is metal. That was pretty fun, filling in all the gaps because there was loads of gaps, loads of super glue. It sounds like I've done loads of hobby, but I haven't at all since Christmas. But I did finish 2 audiobooks, which I've been trying to listen to for ages. One of the Siege of Terror ones and one of the Eisenhorn ones. I had sort of both on the go, so I finished them.
Which one? Which Siege of Terror one?
But I can't remember. I mean, it's still
this
early.
Is important podcast content.
It's still early because I had so many credits like a year and a half ago. I bought them up until I've got 5 more to read, to listen to. I think it's the second one. Don't know. Angron's just landed on Terra.
Okay, yeah. It's the one with Sanguinius versus Sanguinius and Angron at the gates.
Yeah, they haven't fought yet. But yeah, Angron's just landed. Yeah. And but I've been playing a little bit. Been playing Darktide on the Xbox, and it's really good. That we've spoken about the trailer and everything before. It's only been out on Xbox for 2 months, but they really capture the size and scale of a hive city and a hive world. I think it's really well done. I've really felt like just going into the game for half an hour, you really feel like you're immersed into the grimdark, and it is pretty grimdark as well. So I've been enjoying that, and that's sort of inspired me to start another project, which is I've got a Blackstone Fortress Chaos gang. So I'm sort of inspired to paint Chaos because of Darktide. But we spoke about Gaunt's Ghosts last episode, and I thought they've all got masks on. I'm just going to convert them to look more like Blood Pact. So I'm going to do like a Blood Pact gang for the Blackstone Fortress game. Nice. So starting that soon. And I still haven't repaired my Basilisk. So, ongoing.
So Millie putted a horse together and had to think about some new projects.
Yeah.
In a nutshell.
Got distracted by computer games.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But so you've pulled the trigger then. You've been out. You've bought the new X-Bone.
Yeah.
Prepared 7 months in advance by buying the wrong console.
That's right.
And I got that. So I might be there's some other games on there, including Bolt Gun. I need to get at some point and try that out.
All right. Well, Welshie, what have you been up to?
Well, I'm going to potentially shock listeners here because I play miniature-based games that aren't made by Games Workshop.
What? Get off the podcast. Get him out of here. Take him away.
Outrageous. So I've just fairly recently received a big delivery of Ragnarok Mythic Battles, which is a game made by Monolith. They're one of those big Kickstarter games where they tell you what you're going to get in the first box, and then over the campaign they release more and more lovely, beautiful, godlike models. So I've just been absolutely plowing my way through that starter set. Matt played it with me over the festive period. Hopefully he enjoyed it a bit. We had a rat going around and stealing divine stones from Hell, the god of the underworld. So it's pretty fun. And I'm absolutely loving it, actually. It's a complete break from all things 40k. I'm just undercoating in grey, Zenithal in light grey, and ploughing through the whole lot in contrast. But every model
is it kind of like a Viking
different
style? Is it like Viking-y or something? Like
yeah, it's set in the Viking times, and you have gods of the Viking area: Zeus, Thor, Loki, Hel, Eden, etc. You have heroes on your team, so you have like Beowulf, Harald Hardrada, Ragnar. You have some of the monsters that are from that kind of franchise, like Fafnir, the big snake. Loads of things that inspired names within 40K. So the giant serpent Fafnir is obviously the basis of Fafnir Ran, from the Imperial Fists. So yeah, it's a really cool game, but each model is very different. It's very magical. I've used more colors in the past 2 weeks than I've probably used in the entire year previous painting 40K. So yeah, it's just been super nice to paint stuff on a different scale and not try and do everything to top quality 40K painting, but just get color on stuff so that it's playable and the box looks fun. So that's what I've been up to. A little bit different. I'm sure I'll get some around to taking some photos and posting the models on our Instagram at some point, so you guys can see what the hell I'm on about. But if there's anyone listening that plays Monolith, I hope you're enjoying the new game because it's really, really good. What about you, Stoney? Have you been ZBrushing away?
Not really, no. I was doing a bit of, back on my marbling thing. I've been trying to redo some marbling stuff because I had some ideas for it. I've become a bit of a like weird expert at what floats on the surface of water at this point. But so anyway, I made that video where I was using spray paint to do this marbling stuff. And then I saw somebody else had done a video where they used these it's like marbling ink. So it's like this special ink you get especially for doing marbling, but it still comes out with that same kind of blodgy pattern. So then I was thinking, I've been doing way too much marbling stuff, way too much marbling. And
all I can think of is when you sit in your bath and your dick floats to the surface.
It comes out, my whole lower half is marbled but yeah, so I've been trying to think about how to do this, and I think that I'm going to try to 3D print a gadget, which is kind of like a floating tray. That kind of floats half submerged in the water that you can fill with this ink in a pattern and then push models through the tray, if you see what I mean. So it's kind of like but one of the things that I did do, one of the things that I wanted to do was I actually went out and Welshie, you very kindly gave me some Games Workshop vouchers.
Oh yeah, I was gonna bully you for this because you bought some shining spears.
I bought some Elder. I knew I had to. Welshie had given me some, some vouchers. I had to go spend it on some Elder because I thought these would be quite good to do like the dip in, we wondered. Use them as my dip thing. But I'll tell you what else did happen, which is quite a funny thing, and I'd be interested to know if this happened to you as well, Welshie, or also the listeners at home. But the day I picked up that Eldar box, I actually started pissing sitting down. We've got like quite a lot of mirrors in our bathroom, and it had kind of developed into this kind of like that panoramic scene in the Matrix where like in freezing it spins around. It's like that every time I was trying to have a piss. So
it's just like you'll eventually progress to a bidet if you haven't got one.
Yeah, I just pissed directly into a big pearl bucket full of soul stones. Yeah, that's what. So yeah, I want to know if that was something that happened to you, or maybe if you're a female listener listening to this, did you start pissing standing up when you started playing Elder? I don't know. Let's find out.
Finance, cutting edge technology. Accurate information is the Large Blast podcast news. Hear every episode.
New old news from the old worlds. New old worlds news from the old worlds. We've seen the Tomb Kings. We knew it was coming. It's Matt's favourite. We've got the Bretonians. They're coming back. They've got Large Blast templates. We've already heard Matt's broken his streak by ordering it already. So what do we think about this?
I think it's cool it's back, but I know we've discussed the models at length before, but Matt I don't really know if he realizes how lucky he was to get his hands on one of these boxes from our friendly local gaming store, because I logged onto the Games Workshop website about 10 past 10 thinking it's a starter box, they'll probably have made enough, and I was in a queue that told me I was an hour's wait before I could order them, so I immediately logged off the website and gave up.
I logged on, got the website up on my browser about 20 to 10. And as soon as I did that, I got put into a queue to tell me what the queue time was. So it's a queue to get into the queue. There was no time. It just said you were in the queue to like to land on the loading page. When you land, we'll tell you how long the queue is. And I sort of thought like, what did I do for the 40K launch in the summer? And I must have been on the website like an hour before or well in advance. Dead on 10 o'clock, which is the time the pre-orders came live, my browser loaded and it sure enough went to the queue page and it said straight away queue time an hour. Yeah. So I had our local Dice Saloon, the local game store, up on another browser, and at that point I thought, sod it. I had some vouchers from Games Workshop, but in order to secure the box, I just went with the Dice Saloon. Yeah,
they've cocked it up again, like a massive release. I don't know how many people have missed out on this because obviously it's not as big as some of the previous ones. But Leviathan, they produced more than enough. They got that. This. I don't get it. Are they purposefully doing this fear of missing out thing now? This is the first time in a while that the actual Games Workshop site has run out. It's really difficult to get these on some independent retailers like the big ones, Wayland, Element, etc. They sell out almost instantly with that 20% off. In fact, Element weren't even selling them online because they were told by Games Workshop they wouldn't get enough.
Yeah, I was going to say, leading up to it, people were posting a lot on the Old World Facebook group saying that their local shops had been telling them they couldn't stock it because their Games Workshop would, like the week before, last week, just telling them, sorry, you're not going to have any sets. You're not going to have any sets. I almost half expected to get an email or a call from the Dice Saloon like an hour later saying, sorry, we cocked up. We don't have that many sets. I don't know how they ended up with enough to not sell out straight away. I don't know. I mean, I think there was always a risk for Games Workshop with these sets. Like they couldn't have made as many as 40K because 40K is just guaranteed to sell. So that hasn't really annoyed me that much. But seeing all of these shops not getting them like the week before, I think that seems wrong because they're businesses and they're assuming that they're getting what they've asked for, and then a week before or even days before they're being told actually you're only going to get 2 sets, so you're going to get whatever. I mean that's not really on. Yeah, I'd like to add, as we're talking about the Old World, I don't think we've spoken about it before. It's something that I've only just noticed within the last couple of weeks, is that they're bringing back metal models. And
really?
So they're not the metal character models that were made from metal in the early 2000s, some of the Bretonian figures, some of the Bretonian figures that sit on the plastic horses, some of the Tomb Kings figures, they've confirmed are coming back as metal kits. So we're 2024, and Games Workshop yesterday have put up new metal models. Like I would not have thought that would have happened. Yeah.
Do you know if they're manufacturing new ones or they've just got a warehouse full of stuff somewhere?
I think they must be. You can't just find a box of Tomb King leaders and think, oh, we're just going to flog them all. What do you do if you sell them all?
Yeah. Exactly.
There must be a supply. There's a supply chain, and they're churning out metal figures again, which is great. Yeah, I think
that's cool.
Yeah.
I also, points to Games Workshop, saw something I didn't think which is an article they put out essentially in support of how to bulk out your regiments with unit fillers. So that's where essentially you build something that takes up multiple men's worth of space in the unit, so you don't have to paint endless individual infantrymen. And it's something people basically did to save money. And they've kind of supported it officially on Warhammer Community, which I thought was very Games Workshop, very old school White Dwarf, like the days we used to love.
I mean, this is quite funny because this really is like looking backwards, like they've got all this new stuff coming out with all this crazy new design kind of concepts and stuff. And then they're like, you know what, let's also just make a shitload of metal models as well. You see, they're going to announce in a week, they're like, we're bringing back lead. Everything's going to be fucking lead.
This unit fillers thing really made me happy because it was like I kind of thought like next thing we're going to see is White Dwarf having like how to make loads of terrain out of cardboard.
That'd be great.
Like we're on the pinnacle. And it made me think like we are we're seeing Games Workshop like I remember, a bit more like I remember Games Workshop being in sort of 2004, 2005, where you have loads of specialist games. We've got them all now. Necromunda, Blood Bowl, everything being supported, new releases for loads of stuff, apart from Battlefleet Gothic. Yeah.
But it's like it feels like half the company's being swept up in like a wave of nostalgia.
Yes.
And doing all of this fun stuff, whilst the other half is like driving the bottom line and like endlessly changing rules and printing new books that you have to continuously buy, whilst all of the old boys are going, let's just go back to the good old days.
Yeah,
that's the Space Marine section in Games Workshop, like the Space Marine wing that's pumping out money, and then there's like the other guys that are like, well, maybe we should make them out of hay or something.
Talking of money, this Bretonnian set that we've got up, which has got all of the markers, the classic red sticks. We've been through it before, but the price was only really released properly yesterday, and I think it was like £155 on the Games Workshop website, which people were doing the maths online means I haven't checked this. This is from memory. It's like £1.60 per Bretonnian model in that set. And people were comparing this to some of the recent like Kill Team sets, or there was another set that was like 10 figures for like 75 quid in 40k, and like the disparity is
good value.
Really
These
good.
Kits were really good value.
Yeah,
interesting to see the Tomb Kings one was more expensive, but
it was.
There's supposed to be more in it.
Yeah.
I mean, there must be people in your eBay collecting Bretonnians community, Matt, that have spent, or including yourself, probably hundreds of pounds to build an army like this out of original models.
No, because these are all pretty like you could
like
kind
the
of
plastic
pick
second wave ones.
Yeah, you
There's
could.
None of the original
you could pick
old school.
You could pick up. There's a couple of stuff that have come out that I've spent some money on, but not stupid amount of money. The thing that's going to be amazing is when they bring out that Reliloquy model, which people have, and the Trebuchet, because they do go for like over £100 on eBay, and they're bringing them back out in metal. So they're the same kit that people have spent.
I'm so baffled by this. Like, I understand that everyone like is all about the nostalgia, but why are they like make it like the metal models were shit? They were the resin, fucking annoying.
But the resin that they made them in was just crap.
Yeah. Oh well, I mean, the resin. I mean, why don't they just make them with plastic? Plastic. Everyone prefers plastic. Right?
I guess then you have to retool everything, because they're probably the old tool. It's probably all the old tooling. From
so you think they're literally just dusting off the old molds and firing up the forge, throwing tin cans into the fucking smelting device?
It probably takes pressure off what's already quite a pressured area of plastic molding, I suppose. As kits get more and more ambitious, and I don't know.
Is there going to be a foundry now at fucking Warhammer World?
I guarantee. I mean, the foundry I used to work at, we used to keep. If we made a cast for jobs, we'd keep all the molds for a long time. I'm sure
they're still all kicking around in Gav Thorpe's office as paperweights or something. But still,
but I think that they have just opened a new factory. Maybe that it's all tied in with that. They expanded the factory in Nottingham, which caused all sorts of problems last year with supply. The actual production line for the metal models must be new, but the tooling and the molding must all be the original stuff. It's got to be, but the line itself is new. Yeah, let's see where it goes.
Who knows? I'm excited to see what when will there be boxes come out.
When will there be a 40k metal model? How long will it be?
Well, maybe they'll start bringing back a Rogue Trader set like this or something with like two different, Beastie Occult limos coming. So Deathwing, they're coming back. They've got some new models. They're looking quite good. And these are new. These are definitely made of plastic, right? They're not fucking made from wattle and daub or something from the Victorian era or some shit.
Matchsticks.
No, these were the Christmas Angels that they revealed on Christmas Day. So not a big Dark Angels release wave, but a Dark Angels release wave that includes a new Belial, who is I don't know what his official title is, but he's the leader of the Deathwing. He's the Deathwing top bod. He's got a burning skeleton on his base. I think he's quite a cool model, but he's just a big Terminator in a robe.
But it's nice.
There's only so much you can do with the Terminator.
This is part of the kind of revamp of the old stuff rather than anything being spectacularly new. I mean, I still can't get my head over they're just making metal models anymore. So it's just kind of like nothing really surprises me now. But
they made a box set that's like, how many is there's 15
cool.
Terminators and Belial in a box, which is mental. But if you want a Deathwing, there's your Deathwing ready to go.
That's it, yeah. Sort of stereotypically, there's always been the Dark Angel Terminators have been different, and also the Space Wolf Terminators have always kind of had their own flavour as well. So that'll probably come out at some point as well. Maybe I like
what they've done with these. The scale is nice on the new Terminators. Like Matt's always liked.
It's a glow up, isn't it? I mean, really, it's just it's going the other way from the metal stuff where we're making it, plastic and bigger and.
Yeah, absolutely. They also released these Inner Circle companions, which are some of the coolest 40K models I've seen in a while that are Space Marines.
Yeah,
I really like the scale and the detailing on those. It's not too over the top. It's just right.
I love the way the guy's holding out his incense burner. Like, check it out. I've got an incense burner.
Look at this
No one's ever seen one of these fuckers before.
He's like saying to his mate who's got it on his backpack, like, why are you carrying it around like that? You got to show it off.
I've got to hold it away from my robe. It keeps catching fire.
Talking of something that should catch fire, though, they also announced that there will be a Dark Angels Codex supplement, which means it's just the beginning of the end for Space Marine supplements. It's just so unnecessary. You can fit the rules for a couple of detachments in like 4 pages. You just don't need this book. It's money grabbing and it's pointless.
That's it.
It's a bit disappointing.
More last minute rule changes than a badly organised orgy. That's Games Workshop for you. So on our last episode, we did a couple of predictions. Well, we talked about our favourite model of the year, and the proper favourite, what should be our favourite model of the year, has finally been given to us by Games Workshop. So we're going to have a look at it and find out how wrong or right we were. So
I know how this is going to go. Now you've said this should be our official number one of the year, when you both know what the bloody number one was.
That's right. So whoever did not think that this was the official number one model of the year has obviously suffered some kind of horrible brain injury. So let's have a look, shall we? What was the model of the year? Welshie, why don't you let us know?
Well, it was the Lion. Guys are right. You're just too mainstream, too basic.
Oh my goodness! I had a flutter of feels.
There's some. We mentioned Farsight. Vashtor's in there, quite low down the top 10. But it's interesting that Angron has come second. I think that surprises me.
Me as well.
People
I don't dislike the model, but
we unanimously were kind of meh about it, weren't we?
I don't think anyone make our top 10. I don't think. But do you think it is? How are they working this out? Is it sales? Because if it is,
they vote.
Oh, votes. Okay, all right. All right, well, fair enough. I mean, he's a Primarch, So I mean, again, if it's one of those things where if you haven't been bored by the Khorne aesthetic, then maybe you'll be like fine with this. But I'm pretty sure that for a lot of people, it's just another Khorne thing. But I mean, I guess you could say that about Farsight or any of them. But Farsight's got a tree. He's got a cool tree with blossoms on. So So
but I'm shocked he was in third. Like for a Tau model. Farsight and the Death Leaper were my picks, both in the top 10. But I did not expect Farsight to be the public number 3. I think it just shows what a genuinely well-designed model it is. That even if you're not a Tau fan, you could accept that it's good.
Rolling in my 6-4.
Okay, boys. So I want you to close your eyes. I'm looking at you on the camera, so I know if you're doing this. I want you to feel deep inside yourselves. I want you to take yourselves all the way forwards to M30. I'd like you to imagine you're in a Terran hive city, working in a lowly corpse starch factory, getting rained on by drips of unknown origin, filtered through floor after floor of dirt, grime and disease. And a man called the Emperor has just united the entire world and claimed the throne, describing how he's about to embark on a great crusade of conquest across the galaxy to reclaim all the lost worlds legends tell from the distant past. You see a flyer on your way home for a new army asking you to be part of the adventure. Join the Solar Auxilia, it says. You belong here. Get out of the hive. Be all that you can be. You take the flyer and you start reading.
Well, that's right. We're talking about the Solar Auxilia. So if you're ready to join, if you found a penny at the bottom of your pint or whatever it is that you need to be press ganged into joining in this olden day future setting that we're talking about, then this is the show for you. So let's talk about the Solar Auxilia. They are the they're the original Imperial Guard, right? They're the prototype to the Imperial Guard.
Yeah, essentially. So they were set up by the Emperor when he starts the Great Crusade, and they were kind of amalgamated because he knew when he sent the Space Marines off to conquer far distant worlds that he was going to need some kind of general bodies, an army for settling smaller scale disputes, petty uprisings in the solar system, things that were kind of beneath the might of the Space Marine legions. We're not talking whole Xenos worlds that need to be brought to compliance under the iron boot of the Imperium. We're talking about kind of smaller scale stuff. So he sets up what's known as the Imperial Army, and the Solar Auxilia are kind of the elite force that he puts into the Imperial Army. And they go on to make up about 20-25% of the total army. They're a kind of disciplined force that deal with concentrated fire, coherence, and aggressive defense. And the way he designs this kind of elite force within the much larger Imperial Army is to base them on what's known as the Saturnine Ordo, which is a group of humans that held Saturn just after the Unification Wars and at the start of the Great Crusade. So Saturn is kind of interesting because it's a bit like Mars in that it was kind of its own state within the solar system that was being run by a different group of humans. But they catch on very quickly that the Emperor is going to be someone important. And essentially Saturn signs its allegiance with Terra very, very quickly. There's no Void Dragon fighting or chat between the Emperor and the leader of Saturn. It's just Saturn goes, yeah, all right, we'll join you. But they're renowned for having a pretty good force that's been there right back into the Age of Strife when it was fighting the Men of Iron. And the Saturnine fleet, which is really important moving forward into the Great Crusade. And I'm sure we've talked many times about the kind of Saturnine dockyards.
Yes,
lots of fleets and navy are based in.
They were in the World Cup.
They might even have played in the World Cup.
Yeah, they did.
The Saturnine dockyards.
The sailors and
them
dockyard
versus
workers.
The Jovians. I think they played the Jovians.
Yeah, maybe.
So the Saturnine Ordo had some really cool armor, and they were known as Void Hoplites. So he brings to mind like ancient Greek warriors with shields and spears, but these guys had completely contained void armor. So like Space Marine power armor, the Saturnine Ordo could fight literally in space, on the outside of a spaceship floating in space. They were completely hermetically sealed. They had their own power systems. They could fight in like gas war without a problem. So essentially early human power armor. Yeah, they're drinking their own piss like in June.
Oh yeah, that classic, that old bit of lore.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if anybody. Sorry, just splintering off on a random tangent here. Like, do you guys know that in the very first book, Space Marine, written, I can't remember who it was who wrote it.
Written by Ian Watson.
But it's like the very first Space Marine book. There's like a whole section in it where the new Space Marines eat a feast of shit. They literally gather around a table and eat a feast of like poop and stuff. Like, because they can. They've got this like crazy stomachs.
Oh man.
Yeah, the very first Space Marine book.
Do you reckon they get any like memories from the shit, like when they eat people's brains with their omophagia or whatever it is?
Yeah.
They can remember like who's been banging who up the arse.
Like, there's some Subway in this one.
Yeah, this one's that sweet corn.
The memories.
The
memories.
I'm pretty sure the Saturnine Ordo didn't do any shit feasting. They were pretty well respected. But so initially the Solar Auxilia copies these as kind of like a cheaper version. They worked out how to mass produce this void armor for humans. and then initially started recruiting from Mars, from Terra, from Saturn. And then as the kind of Solar Auxilia went out, they began recruiting from other worlds, but they tended to only recruit from privateering worlds and like worlds with decent Navy tradition. So they're kind of selecting for better people who've got a bit of it more experience than just your average Joe. But they still pick people like up off the streets and train them. Like anyone could get into the army and then work their way into the Solar Auxilia, like if you wanted to get into the SAS or the Marines or something. So when he sent them out, they mostly ran with expeditionary fleets and also rogue traders. And what they kind of did is either on the expeditionary fleets go out to new worlds and explore and give some aspect of protection, or they followed in the wake of the Space Marines in the Great Crusade, and they'd land on planets that had fully reached compliance, and then they'd train the local defense forces and militia. So they didn't just have this like active army role, they also had this kind of training role to maintain the empire as it went forward, which, you know, goes back to like Roman times, I suppose, which is really cool. And some of them then get these great names for fighting because essentially they are second only to Space Marines. Like these guys are so much better than a normal bloke in normal uniform. They've got power armor, they can breathe in whatever, they can see in the dark. So they start getting these really cool names. So some of them they're called the Shore Skull Takers of the Grail Abyss, the Chthonian Headhunters and Jackal Cohorts, which are obviously from Chthonian. So when the heresy starts, some of them turn. But interestingly, like most of the Solar Auxilia stay loyal. There's only a few incidences where they turn to Horus, and one of them is the Chthonian Jackal Cohorts, which kind of start this weird battle for supremacy on Chthonian, where to get recruited you have to like survive gang war, all this full gang warfare, and like fight your way to the top to make your way into them.
We should say Chthonian is the homeworld of Horus and the Lunar Wolves.
Yes, exactly. Ash Scorpions, the Death's Heads, and the Saturnine Rams are all other ones. But essentially, you've now got this fighting force of supreme army men in excellent armor that allows them to survive in the void, making up about a quarter of the Imperial army at this time. And that's the basis of the Solar Auxilia. I guess they move on to Guard, but there always was an Imperial army. So it's not like the Imperial Guard based solely on the Solar Auxilia. The Solar Auxilia is more, I would say, that the Tempestus Scions are kind of more like the Solar Auxilia equivalent in 40K.
Yeah. I kind of went into it thinking that they were Proto-Guard, and the more I read about them, the more I've kind of they're not Proto-Imperial Guard. I almost think that actually they're an army that just doesn't exist in 40K. There's just nothing like them. They're their own separate formation, as I'll go into when I talk about the organization. There's nothing like them. I don't think we could say that they are Proto-Guard. That we need to think of them as not genetically engineered Space Marines. They are almost.
They exist in the Guard army, don't they? Can you still get? No, they don't. Well, who are those other guys that have got the fancy
not by this name, really.
No, okay.
No, that's what she was saying. Like the Scions, like the Stormtroopers, but they're.
They've got like the Scions have got fancy armor and fancy weapons, but they're not like sealed armor. And it made me think like maybe they're. If we had a massive following, we might get cancelled for saying this, but are they male Sisters of Battle? Is that what they are?
Well, that's an interesting. I mean, yeah. Well,
can the Sisters of Battle survive the void? Is their power armor sealed?
Yeah, I think it's like actual power armor. Yeah. I mean, I guess you could compare them. The thing. So I'll talk about the organization as they ended up. Let's just say before the Horus Heresy. So the pinnacle of their power. And I would still say that. I can understand the comparison with the Sisters of Battle because of the way they're armored and the way they fight, but the organization of the Solar Auxilia means that they have their own fleets, they have their own armor, they have everything they need to do to do every kind of role that's asked of them, including, as you say, training after a battle. Whereas the Sisters of Battle are always sort of part of a larger Imperial force. They need the Imperial Navy. They need battle fleets. They need Inquisitors, and they need guardsmen probably to help them, because their forces are probably quite small. So they are like a Space Marine Legion. They are an independent force. They have their own everything to just go off on their own and fight on their own.
Interesting that they're still baseline humans, but just because of the equipment they have lifts them above everyone else at the time.
Yeah.
There was one guy I was reading, seeing as the old world has come back, a fella called Ayrton Massard, who was born in Old Albia. So he's an Englishman who joined the Imperial Army at 16, worked his way up into the Solar Auxilia, became Lord Marshal of the Solar Auxilia, worked his more than 100-year lifespan with all of his enhancements all the way through, hit retirement, retired, got a pension, and then Horus Heresy started, and he went back into active service as Lord Marshal post-retirement to marshal the Solar Auxilia in response to Horus. Which, that's the kind of thing they are the best of the army, and it functions independent of the standard army structures.
Yeah,
because they're in their infancy at the time.
Wake up!
Yeah, as we've been saying, the Solar Auxilia are heavy void infantry formations, and they operate as self-contained forces. So they don't need anyone else to fight with them. Commanders can send them to a planet or a region of space, and they have all of the equipment they have, and the training that they have allows them to tackle the objective, whatever it is. They're fully trained and equipped to take on void war zones. So as we've said, they can actually fight in space. They can fight on land, fight in spaceships, hazard planetary environments, and things like heavily contested boarding actions. So they are like they are just Marines. They are actual Marines in space. They're just not Space Marines.
Marines in space doesn't have the same ring to it, though, does it?
Yeah, I know.
They're the other ones, the Marines in space.
Yeah.
It's like the knockoff game you'd find at, like, I don't know, like the Mattel version of
yeah. Robert Kopp or whatever it was.
Yeah. As we've said, their formation and the way they were built as an organization changed during the Great Crusade. But by the time of just before the Horus Heresy, they're split into cohorts, and a cohort would typically number around 120,000 individuals plus a command structure. So that's like the independent army that would be sent to deal with a problem. 120,000 men and the command structure, and they would go in their own fleets of warships, and their warships would include ships like heavy cruisers, frigates, bastions, and corvettes. So everything apart from battleships, because there is a separate. The Imperial Navy didn't exist, but there's a Armada Imperialis, I think it was called, which was part of the Imperial Army. But these guys are so separate that they have their own battle fleets. The cohort is the fundamental building block, and within the cohort, at the tactical level, there is something called a tertio, and a tertio is a formation that is then split into three. So you start to break down the cohorts, I guess, almost into regiments. So you have like an army and then regiment. So a tertio is a regiment, and they would have different battlefield roles. So you'd have a tertio that was had support weaponry. You'd have infantry tertios, armored tertios, and that's like the building block of your cohort. Typically, a cohort would be led by a Lord Solar or a Lord Militant. A Lord Solar is different to the 40K Lord Solar. It's a different rank. And they're not linked. It's just Solar is the name for the sun.
But they have nothing to do with the other Solar guy on his shitty horse.
No.
No. You know, I know that we're supposed to be doing more about Solar Auxiliary stuff here, but I've just been reading up some more quotes from this Space Marine book, this Ian Watson Space Marine book. So, like, if anyone gets a chance, I think we should do a whole episode on this Ian Watson Space Marine. I'm just reading a passage here about them. Rogel Dawn's involved in the shit-eating festival. He's there portioning out the shit like that guy from Oliver Twist at the
He's
front
building
there.
a little barrier on his plate, building a little wall like to split the gravy in two.
That's right.
You
They've
can't get your peas past my wall of shit.
There's some really baffling lines in this. Like, I've just read the line, the Space Marine vessel slammed up the rectum of the spacefaring Tyranid hive ship. I just read a passage about them, like, here's this. Yet still there was no branding upon their leather-torn buttocks. The imprint of a clenched fist, no longer than a fingerprint. Only this was indeed to be an honour. So it's about them getting branded with the Imperial fist signs on their arse. So anyway, we need to read this book, man. Anyway, go back to Solar Auxiliary.
Okay, I see what you're doing.
So a cohort would have its own fleet. They have warp-capable ships, warp-capable transport ships, troop transport ships, boarding craft. I'm just going to list off a few vehicles that they have: planetary landers, combat drop vessels,
Do they
orbital
slam up
lighters.
the rectum of Tyranid ships, though? These boarding vessels?
Well, they probably could do if they were Tyranids, which they weren't.
There's
So
no
I don't
Tyranids
know.
yet.
Oh, of course, they're slamming up the...
They do have something cool, though, Matt. You mentioned the Shark assault boat.
Yes. So these are... They sound just like boarding torpedoes from, like, Battlefleet Gothic, from actual 40K.
Well, Shark assault boats are in Battlefleet Gothic, I believe, but I think they're different because torpedoes, like, go into the hull. Whereas
they call them boarding torpedoes. They have like melter
like
guns on the front.
Boats, they've got magnets on that like stick.
All right.
So these have got like a big magnet on the front that sticks to the side, and then the magnet is surrounded by melter guns that melt through the fuselage.
Oh yeah, and then you get a void.
Run in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're bigger than boarding torpedoes. I think they can fit like way more people in.
Yeah.
It's like a ship that just goes up like one of those fish that sucks on like a shark.
Yeah, but that wouldn't work with a Tyranid rectum, would it? That would be a problem.
No.
It'd be eating that Tyranid's ass.
You try and like use the melter, you'd blow up in a big methane bubble.
But do you know one of the main characters in this book is called Sergeant Biff? Biff bent over and flexed his great glutinous muscles of their rumps. That's another passage from the book there about getting branded on the earth.
I mean, they have everything. They have tanks, super heavy tanks, artillery. They have everything they need to do. The only thing they don't like to do is siege warfare, so they stay away from that. They have their own pilots.
Tank options are basically the entire Forge World tank range, aren't they?
Yeah. You've
cool
got
Malkadors.
The Malkadors, but also Baneblades, Shadow Sword. Yeah. And the Malkadors, they use fancy Lehman Russ battle tanks, the Mars Solar pattern Lehman Russ battle tanks, which are like...
So if these guys aren't the kind of the prequel to the Imperial Guard, are the Imperial Guard kind of like the special constables to these guys, police officers, if you see what I mean? Because it sounds like they've just got all the gear and all the stuff that the Guard should be. The
Imperial Guard is the Imperial Army.
Right.
Is what it was called. So
I think maybe these are like the SWAT team to the police, if you wanted to do that.
Sure. All right. Fair enough.
Comparison.
I mean, Welshie, you've mentioned like historical analogies, but like these, in many ways, more than the Space Marine legions, these guys are the Roman Legion.
Yeah.
They sign on for 30 years. The Roman legionaries signed on for 25 years. They get a pension at the end of it. They get land.
I read about this. Yeah. They actually get stuff, don't they?
Yeah.
There's actually kind of like a benefit to like a lot of these guard guys. They're like born already in debt or something random like that, and they've got to like fight to sort of work off the debt of their fathers or whatever. But these guys, there is a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. If they can cut them out of their fucking void armor and send them back or whatever.
Yeah, and I think and that probably goes some way into making them so. They're nearly as good as Space Marines because their discipline is renowned. Their discipline, and they have iron hard discipline. They don't fall back. That's partly because the situations that they end up fighting in doesn't allow for retreat. They're on a spaceship. They have to capture the spaceship as do or die, for example. The because they're in it for 30 years and they get something at the end of it, you want to survive that 30 years, and you're going to do you're going to train hard. I read that they also get access to better medical care. They live for longer because they have access to drugs that make them live longer. So although 30 years seems like a long time, their lifespans are about 200 years. So their life is just constantly training.
So is there any way, obviously the Imperial Army, I guess they've always kind of operated the same way depending on what homeworld you come from or whatever, but did you start in the Imperial Army and then get kind of like headhunted for the Solar Auxilia, or is it kind of like, do they recruit from the Imperial Army, or?
I think they recruit from fewer worlds, so they're more selective with their recruitment. But I think you can, if you're particularly outstanding in the army, there's probably a selection criteria. But in terms of like I think the army just takes from wherever it conquers.
Yeah.
But it just seems like there must be if you're in the Guard, surely you must want to get into the Solar Auxilia, because it's just sounds like way better in terms of like their benefits and their healthcare and shit.
You probably have to be from like a world that has a Solar Auxilia cohort from. So we mentioned what's the Lunar Wolves' home planet? Cathonia. Cathonia. So we mentioned Cathonia and Saturn. Like my understanding was that the Emperor didn't just like steal the Saturn Solar Auxilia like military concept, but actually they were sort of merged. So some of those original regiments still existed in the Solar. So the
Saturn
Rams or whatever
regiments were part of the Saturnine Rams.
So if you were growing up on one of the moons of Saturn or in the dockyards, probably like it must be like ultimate dream to get into one of those regiments, because they're not just like a new Space Marine Legion. They're something that's been around for hundreds of years defending Saturn. They have that
like
lineage.
Of years.
Yeah, you're right, because Saturn didn't get taken during Dark Age,
during the Age of Strife. So these guys go way back before the Men of Iron as a concept.
Yeah. So that must, if you live around Saturn, the pinnacle of your life must be to get into these famous formations.
That Roman comparison is interesting because they're called the Auxilia, but they're more like the Centurions than the Auxiliaries.
Yeah.
They're the well-fed, well-nourished people in charge that get landed and pay off at the end, whereas the Auxiliaries are almost
the Imperial Army.
The army that's around them, whoever's picked up by wherever they conquer as they go, that's brought into the fold, and maybe if you work hard enough you can get into the Auxiliary.
And that something I read online, like when we talk about the Imperial Army coming from all the planets, and like you said, Stoney, they kind of they take the aspect of their homeworld with them, like the regiments. You have like in 40K, like chem dogs or feral regiments or whatever. The army was similar. There was no real universal doctrine. So one Imperial Army regiment or force on one planet would be completely different to another one, and they might get bundled together to fight. Whereas the Solar Auxilia follow a set doctrine. They're all the same. They operate in the same way. Therefore they know, everyone knows what they're doing, and you can group them together and they'll fight together. You can separate them up and they fight on their own. And because they follow that doctrine, the Space Marine Legions know how they fight and can fight with them. And the Space Marine Legions held them in high regard. Like they were seen almost on par as another legion, which, as we say, for a non-altered baseline human, that's a pretty good achievement.
You would have thought that in some ways they should be held up as more than Space Marines, because surely like Space Marines are kind of like abhumans in a way.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I kind of thought as I read into it, and because their organization makes them like an entirely separate military force. Like in 40K, you just don't get that. Like the Imperial Guard was deliberately separated from the Navy, so to stop the power of future rebellions like the Heresy. But the only stuff that still has fully independent ability to fight wherever and whenever they want is a Space Marine chapter. Everyone else doesn't have their own separate force. Like they are just like a different Space Marine Legion.
It is kind of interesting that there's this series of rules that runs through it that's more consistent than with a separate Imperial Guard. You know, it seems like if you join the Imperial Guard, they're kind of making it work, whereas this is you know, in the structure they have, where this is kind of like it's the classic, you know, it's like the boot camp, isn't it? They pull you out of your world and put you into this structure of how they see this working, you know.
Like you couldn't take a regiment of Catachan and expect them to work well with a regiment from Krieg.
No, exactly.
But you could take regiments from 2 planets of Solar Auxilia and they'd know exactly
have
how
the
to
same
fight.
fit. Yeah.
Do
you guys want to know what Sergeant Biff's full name was in the?
We're trying to do a serious podcast here.
Space Marine. So his full name is Biff Tarndirish. And there's actually a part in the book where he says it's biffing time.
Just remember all caps when you spell the man name.
Should we just talk about their equipment for a little bit? Because we keep
got
saying
some cool
that they're
stuff, haven't they?
Yeah, and as you say, their void armor, Welshie, they have excellent void armor, and that's the thing that they're recognized for, or at least that's what you see in the model. They wear this bulky gear.
It's worth saying, I made a comparison when I introduced them to power armor, in that what I meant was that it's like properly sealed, but it's not like power. It's not quite as tough looking as power armor. Like it looks like power armor crossed with the moon landing spacesuits. Like there are bits of it that are kind of fabric and stuff, but they are sealed, and you know, you've got these big rubber gauntleted gloves literally bolted onto the suit of the
it's got a bit of a deep sea diving type thing going on, or like
for sure. But they've got some cool weaponry as well.
I read that it's self-healing against minor penetrations and lacerations.
I think ceramite's supposed to be a bit like that, isn't it? Or at least the ceramite that Space Marines have is like got tiny tubes. It's like that stuff, that stuff you put in your tires, that slime where you get a hold and it like expands and dries out and feels the crack. It has that for sure. And it's also like heat resistant. So if you're in like a big nuclear blast, you don't get cooked inside your suit. It's chem resistant. It looks pretty mobile compared to how I imagine some power armor works. It looks heavy though.
Yes.
It's going to be pretty strong. There's some aspects of it that's definitely got a kind of pneumatic function between the joints that are probably adding a bit of power.
It's like one of the things I kind of like about it, and we talk about it being a more historical, kind of like historically based a bit, the 30K stuff, you know, is that it does look more like a kind of a suit of armor, where like the benefits of it are kind of almost weighed out by the kind of the things that would be really difficult about fighting in a big old fucking spacesuit, as they essentially are, doesn't it? So it looks like you'd have to be quite specialist to wear it, you know, which is quite cool, which does actually kind of, you know, in keeping with everything we've been saying.
Sure.
And they have, so as well as their armor that is very recognizable, something that makes them slightly different to the Imperial Army is the fact that they have a different main gun. So they don't have a las gun. They carry a las rifle, a Calibrax 5.1 pattern las rifle, which
how is it different to a las gun?
Well,
it's just better. More expensive.
It's just better. Yeah. Well, I think I did read about it. I can't quite remember, but it's meant to have a better power packs, better rechargeability, just a more powerful shot.
It's just better. All the things that a las gun does, it does better.
But they also use the classic weapons, flamers, melters, multi-lasers, las guns, volt kite weapons, but they have some pretty weird stuff as well. I read about a graviton weapon, which is I think we may have spoken about them at some point in the podcast, where they basically adjust the gravity around an enemy, so you can sort of blast someone with it and make all their organs implode with the force of gravity. Don't quite know how that works, but
just like a floppy skin with like goo coming out of it.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds better than a las gun, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Fair
but
enough.
they've got lightning guns.
Lightning guns.
Yeah, which fires an ionizing las beam with a powerful phased discharge of electromagnetic force. It's equally effective at slaughtering the living and overloaded machine targets. Sounds a bit like, I don't know, it's almost like a railgun.
Or like how I imagine Tesla working in the Necrons.
When I was reading through the equipment, and there were a couple of, I haven't made notes on any of them, but there were a couple of items where it said it might come from Xenos, or it might be inspired by Xenos tech. So they had quite exotic weaponry. They also used some forms of automata. They had automatic artillery that was automated artillery that was run by automata, so that they didn't need to crew artillery pieces.
I've just read a book review for Ian Watson's Space Marine book.
Yeah,
well, it has described Ian Watson as a sewer goblin for his trampling over the law. It's a very old review where it says that it's okay to call Ian Watson a sewer goblin for his trampling of the law in his latest book, Space Marine.
So another bit of equipment that they have, I suppose you could kind of call it equipment, are Ogrins. So this highly elite force actually employed Ogrins known as Ogrin Charonites. And these are like, they're quite horrible, actually. They're basically semi-lobotomized servitor Ogrins, like something out of the Dark Eldar. So these are Ogrins that have their lower arms amputated and replaced with massive close combat weaponry, either claws or circular saw blades or like big kind of secateur type things. And they're like I say, literally almost servitor level. I mean, Ogrins already kind of just do what you tell them if you train them to like you. But these guys are kind of,
I mean, they don't
control. The Adeptus Mechanicus are really not fans of this kind of semi-cybernetic human.
They've not been kind to the Ogrins, have they, on this? Let's face it. I was reading as well that they actually use like the brainia of the Ogrins as well. So there's almost kind of like a selection process with the Ogrins where they use the best of the best and then lobotomize them and chop their limbs off. So it's kind of shitty on two fronts.
Well, I'd read that actually when they're not in combat, they have prosthetics. So they actually have they still can use their arms. They have a prosthetic arm. I mean, I guess that's the thing. Like this, we're kind of Grimdark hasn't happened yet. It's not 40K. It's still the height of the Imperium. So actually, although cutting their arms off sounds like it is cruel, they actually are given prosthetics and a life.
That's all right then.
Yeah. So it's not sort of.
When you say prosthetics, it's just like a couple of forks stuck in their stumps. Like...
What more do you want?
There you go, get out there.
I guess they're a bit like dreadnoughts, I suppose.
Yeah.
In the kind of that,
or
they
Terminators.
fill that battlefield role. Or Terminators. They're much bigger than Terminators, though.
Yeah.
But although we can't say, I mean, I get the Solar Auxiliary not being Imperial Guard thing, but I do think that their Ogrins are kind of like proto Ogrins to be in the that you see in the Guard army. Because I think that they were the first people to use them, weren't they? The Solar Auxiliary.
I don't. They're definitely the first mention in lore that you get of Ogrins.
And then after a while, someone was like, "Do we really need to lobotomize these guys? They're kind of dumb anyway. Like, I mean, can't just give them a gun."
They, I mean, we're talking about how scary and frightening they look. They do look like Chaos Ogrins. They look a lot like the Chaos Ogrin models. There's not much. There's not much making them different.
Have a
quick
Gene
Stealer culty as well.
They are, yeah.
I didn't, and before this episode, I had no idea they existed, but I really want to get a couple. for my Gene
Yeah.
Stealer cult.
Mm.
Because they are
they would
badass.
fit in. I mean, the whole model range is really neat, really smart.
Yeah,
maybe this is why they're expanding the range potentially.
yeah. The veterans have got kind of Volkite, almost all Volkite guns by the looks of things, which is cool. And they also have this close combat squad called the Velatris, which have these almost Klingon fighting blade style power axes.
Well, I always thought that the Velatris were kind of like the firemen of 30K. Like,
they do look a bit like
firemen.
Well,
They look like
yeah.
firemen from like a 90s action film.
Yeah.
Yeah. If there was some kind of space fireman film, like, yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, they get love in the Legion Imperialis as well in terms of model range. So that's where the original, the first Sentinel we saw is the Aethon Heavy Sentinel, which is a Sentinel dreadnought sized thing in real life. Obviously, in Legion Imperialis is a couple of centimeters tall. And they also have these kind of things that look a lot like proto Thunderfire cannons that you can get for Legion Imperialis.
Yeah, these are Reaper batteries. So they used Reaper batteries a lot, which the Imperial Army didn't have. So they're tracked heavy weapons. Well, as you've mentioned, the Jackals and how they fell to Horus, we should probably talk about what happens to the Solar Auxilia in the Heresy and what happens to them. Where do they go?
Why can't you buy 40k Solar Auxilia?
Yeah.
And the answer is I've got no idea.
Well, so the Jackals, I didn't know the name, but my understanding was that two fell to Horus, and as you say,
it might have been more, but I could certainly find that there were definitely two Chthonian legions, the Headhunters and the Jackals.
Oh, they were that. So one of them was called the Jackals.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, from what I read, it was only those two because they were from the homeworld of Horus. The others were all stayed loyal to the Emperor because of their training, which is weird because then, considering only two groups of them betrayed the Emperor, they just sort of disappear.
They fizzle out of the lore, and even like trawling through the internet trying to find out, like, do they all die? They just kind of fizzle out, I guess, in the post-heresy. I mean, they'd be a really interesting part of what I hope Dan Abnett does next, which is explain that period of time between the Emperor being confined to the throne and 40k starting.
The scouring.
How do these end up? I assume they just kind of a technology that gets lost amongst all other things like the Volkite cannons and all that kind of stuff, and folded into the new regimes that start, the Astra Militarum, the Imperial Navy. I guess these are more Navy side. I think of all the models that exist in 40k, I think those naval breaches models are the closest kind of design aesthetic to what these guys have.
That's kind of like earlier where I said they're almost like actual Marines in space, because they don't get stuck into siege warfare. They deploy from space either to take out other ships or to take out space stations, or very quick campaigns on planets and then get out or do training. They are like Marines, but from what I could find out, the Solar Auxilia around Ultramar were all basically wiped out, and then and so perhaps people were saying perhaps they just so much of the military structure was destroyed that at the end of it, people didn't know what to do, so you couldn't redo it. Like, you couldn't rebuild a Roman legion after.
I mean, they didn't get their bit of land, did they? After
But I also saw, or some people were hinting at evidence, no idea if it's true, but evidence or mentions of the fact that there could be very, very similar formations, again, still around Ultramar in the 500 worlds, where they have the ultra, what are they called, like the ultra auxiliaries or something very similar, and that some elements of the Solar Auxilia could still exist in some form in 40K, but not near Saturn.
And they definitely inspire some of the stuff we see in the Militarum Tempestus. I mean, I think that they just get folded in and absorbed into the new structures that form and fulfill different roles and join other things. You got the Scions. There's like super good regiments like the Lucifer Blacks that go all the way back to the Age of Strife that are still a regiment. Maybe like the Elysian drop troops in terms of like what's available in the range.
Well, I don't know
similar roles.
I don't know what the lore is written about the Scions, but the stormtroopers, which are basically the Scions, I think, but the Imperial Guard stormtroopers go to the thing on the school on
Scholar Progenium.
Yeah, that's it, the Scholar Progenium, where they all the stormtroopers train there as well on Earth.
I mean, nothing's ever written out forever, is it? Like, you could definitely, throw a couple of these guys into your Imperial Guard force or whatever.
I'm definitely after this episode gonna Gene Stealer some up. I can tell you that much. There's a lot of these models I'd like to paint and stick a third arm on.
It's a great way for Games Workshop, if they do add to the range, to have an alternative Imperial Guard range.
Yeah, there's some of these Forge World ones, like especially those Velatris. If they bring those out in plastic, they would look really good. I'm not sure I want a resin set of them, but plastic set would be
a good kill team or something, wouldn't it? Something like that, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But it's been a long time. I think it was back in the episode 40 something when we did the Imperial Guard special, where I was talking a little bit about different guard regiments and things like that. But I did a little bit of redigging. I went back on and I found some of the guard regiments we didn't get time to talk about on that one. And I thought that maybe might be quite fun to mention some of them, because I don't know what this episode was about.
Well, let's see if any of them measure up to the Solar Auxilia.
Yeah.
So have you guys ever heard, I think Matt, you might have mentioned these guys at some stage, but the
Indigan Prefects.
So these guys live on a planet which was basically used to be run by some kind of like crazy pompous, like just rich weirdo that like filled the planet full of like exotic animals, like a big zoo. And a bit like Jurassic Park, they all escaped and like grew massive and basically just overran the planet to the point where it became a death world. And the guys, the militias from Indigan, they basically specialize in beating massive monstrous creatures, and their first day on training is you've got to go out and kick the shit out of a Godzilla, basically. So they're really good at like taking down Tyranid guys, and I kind of think that's where we talked about them in the past, was there was these guys that were like super good at taking down Tyranids. But yeah, it's basically like Jurassic Park went to shit and they lived there and then had to get really good at killing dinosaurs.
Well, it doesn't sound quite as elite as these guys, but I'd want them in a fist fight.
Well, these guys are killing dinosaurs. These other guys are just big babies sealed inside a romper suit. Yeah, I've got some other ones if you want.
Yeah. Hit us up.
Oh, yeah, you want some ones? You want some more? Okay, cool.
If this is your contribution.
This is my contribution, yeah. So the other guys who I thought were quite cool are the
Heraconi.
They live on this, like, a planet with, like, really low gravity and has these... So as a result, it has this, like, really, really high hive cities that can be built much higher because the gravity's a lot weaker there.
Oh, sweet.
And they basically serve their planet by hunting these things called vapor worms, which are these kind of like massive sort of, I'm guessing they're kind of like when they say worm, I'm assuming they mean in the medieval kind of dragon style, like, kind of beastie. And they basically use something called grav gliders. So these motherfuckers, they stand up in the top of these crazy hive cities. They're like, is that a fucking vapor worm? They jump out with these gliders and jump on the back of them and kick the shit out of these vapor worms, which I thought was pretty fucking cool. And they're like, they're used by the Imperial Guard as like fearless altitude drop troops that are great at judging air currents and stuff like that. Thought they were pretty cool.
Yeah, nice.
I think it must be kind of funny if you're just like a vapor worm, you're hanging out with another vapor worm, and you're just like, oh, what's going on? Yeah, been eating some vapor, and then just a guy falls from the sky and starts stabbing the shit out of you.
Yeah.
That's pretty badass.
Cash rules everything around me. Queen, get the money. Dollar bill, yo.
I've got a quote that we can round out on that sums up the Solar Auxilia quite well, I think, as a linking back to how we imagined ourselves at the start of this lore section. And it goes,
Let my epitaph be this. I was born nameless and abandoned in the gutter of a sunless pit, but I have died a conqueror of worlds.
It's Lord Militant Arius Slide. And I couldn't find where that was sourced, but I read it on Fandom. So if you wrote that, well done. It's a
nice
great quote.
I'm actually pretty sure that came from quote from the book Space Marine. So that's just before they all tucked into some shit and started fisting Rogel Dawn. Peace. All right, everybody, you know what time it is. The random topic generator. We use the company dice sealed in its hermetically sealed chamber in the radium gas that we have pumped specifically for it. Rolshi, I believe, is going to roll at any minute now.
Oh,
and it will tell us that
it's a pretty dark lore-based question today.
Oh,
boys.
yeah.
It's what are your New Year's resolutions for the hobby?
That's good timing.
Start us off, Matt. What's your resolution for the year?
Okay. I've been thinking about this. I actually sort of have a couple, but my main one is that I'm going to be quite busy this year. My goal is to just set aside half an hour to paint every day. That's the target. Just no videos, nothing to distract me while I paint. Just half an hour, sit down and paint for half an hour. And if I do more, I do more. And that's just the goal. I also want to, it's been 3 years in the making, but I really want to finish my Sisters of Battle Armies on Parade thing that I've been working on in the background. and also my AdMech flyer, which has been in the making for about 4 years now.
I remember that.
Paint it.
I remember back
yeah.
then.
He's had it printed for about 3 years.
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, I just need to paint it. Yeah. So yeah, a couple of projects that I want to finish.
Well, I am also going to be quite busy this year. I've only got half the year in the country. The other half of the year, I will be working my way around the world. So I've got 2 resolutions, really, one for each. The first half of the year where I'm here is to finish as much stuff as I've started as possible, including my Titan that I've had for almost 4 years now. So you're not the only one, Matt. Finish off my Titan in the first half of the year and finish off as much as I can from my backlog without buying any more. And then the second half of the year, I'm going to commit to this now, and it's something we can discuss moving forward at episodes. If you boys have got any ideas, I'd like to take a small set of paints away with me when I'm traveling and a small set of units, maybe pick up some more as I go, and just try and pick maybe 3 or 4 colors and paint when I get chance around the world with a very minimal paint setup. I mean, obviously here I've got 50 plus paints, all the terrain things, but something that I can do where I'm away and then kind of finish models, send them back, try and go to foreign games workshops, pick up a few more models and just keep a little squad ticking over. So if you boys got any ideas, I haven't really consolidated that yet, but that's my plan. Paint a little bit.
Going to foreign games workshops would be fun. I keep seeing people posting pictures of that bike outside the Bangkok one or wherever.
I'm definitely going to head there. I'm definitely going to go to as many kind of board gaming cafes as possible, spread the LBP gospel. I might even do some little like vlog videos of them as I go around the world, but something to do with that.
Do it. Rate every games workshop. Every country.
Because I guess you just got to come up with the smallest palette of paints to take. But if you go to the games workshops, you'll be able to just like get a bit of paint. I'm sure like a bit of pink. If you had a model that you needed,
just ask them really nicely.
Yeah. Can I just put a little bit of if you buy something, I'm sure. So like
I mean, I could definitely sit and have an hour painting in the games workshop.
Yeah.
But likely some kind of Blanchitsu style Inquisition squad or something like that. I'm going to take with me.
Expect
some parcels in the posts, fellow hosts. Ooh. What about you, Stoney? What's your resolutions for next year?
Well, I'm going to read the rest of this Space Marine book. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a part in the book where a bunch of scouts find a Titan and they eat the brain of the Titan pilot, and then they're able to pilot the Titan themselves. So there you go. Shit. That's a piece of lore that has been forgotten to time, but I'll be full of it.
This is the mark of a professional.
So you know what time it is. It's the Lords of Law quiz where I pit Matt and Welshie against each other to find out who is the Lords of Law. And today, have you guys ever heard of Rule 34? Do you know what that is?
No.
Is that the thing that, like, if you can imagine it, it's on the internet?
If you can imagine it, then there is porn of it on the internet.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're going to put that to the test. And we're going to, I want you guys to give me a name. I'm going to put that name into Google with the word nude afterwards. And we're going to find out who has the most nude art images made of them.
Okay.
How are we calculating? Is it like the amount of images on the first page of Google Images?
I'm going to do number of hits.
Okay.
So,
Is it a character's name?
It's the character's name.
Okay.
I did a little test of this beforehand, and some of it might surprise you. Some of the what does well and what does not badly might surprise you. But
well, I've got one. Celestine.
Welshie, who do you want to go against Celestine? Who's going to get?
So I've got to pick someone I think can beat Celestine. So we might want to keep some of our top ones back potentially.
That's right.
Okay, I think Celestine is a good one. I think in a similar vein, and she came in the same box. I'm going to say Inquisitor Greyfax.
Oh, okay.
There's lots of them together. I will be shocked if they're not together on Google.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Matt has run away with this one. It's 92,000 to 35,000. So Matt,
Google this myself.
You've
used the good one.
But you have used a good one there. You have used a good one.
Well, I'll go first on this one. I'll get Evrain out there now. I'm gonna go all out.
Avlain. Okay, I've got Evrain. The results are in. Matt, who do you think?
Shadow Sun.
Okay, so this is another runaway for you, Matt. This is 237,000 to Urain's 20,000. People want to see nude Shadow Sun. She is by far the most.
Spell Evrain. That's the problem.
Yeah. Oh, I can't spell Urain. And to be honest with you, most of the people that are making nude fan art of her probably upload her with a different name because they can't spell it either because they're 12. So let's move on.
She's got 2 camel toes.
Yeah, she is all camel toe. If you're into camel toe,
three camel toes.
I was keeping Shadow Sun in reserve for if Matt pulled something unexpected out the bag.
No, Shadow Sun was definitely the top trump card.
Yeah, I thought she might be.
People just love those weird blue aliens.
They love putting things in forehead holes. That's what it is. We've talked about it before. Matt's had dreams about it. He's confessed to it.
Yeah, dreams, quote unquote. Yeah, I remember those.
Let's go for a man each, Matt. We got to pick a male.
Yeah, I've got one. The Emperor.
The Emperor. Oh, okay.
I'll go Fulgrim.
Okay. How do you spell Emperor?
Emperor.
Oh, holy. Okay.
But if it's just Emperor, it could be like any Emperor. It could be Emperor Nero. You know.
Well, I mean, you got to keep that into account, I guess. What did you?
Matt's just everyone that's ever thought about a Roman emperor nude.
Yeah.
You're right, Welshie. Some of your logic may have filtered through onto Matt's search result. 6,250,000 to 127,000. So yeah, the Emperor nude certainly has revealed a lot of results. So,
how many was Fulgrim though? Was he more than any of the women?
Well, 120. Yeah, he was. He was more than Celestine. But he's still about half as much as Shadow Sun. So yeah. So okay. So this is it. Final go. You've used up all the sexy ones. Who's left? Who's left now? This is bar 4 a.m. Who you picking up?
I'm trying to think of named female characters.
Well, it seems like the females aren't even the Emperor so far. I mean, we've got the Emperor and Fulgrim of both. I mean, obviously Shadow Sun, but she's got some other things going for her that people seem to like.
I'm just going to go with Demon.
Demon? I'm not going to do that. That's not fair.
Demonette.
All right, you know what? Fuck it, I'll do it.
Oh, well, then I'll do Sister of Battle.
All right, okay, here we go.
Here we go. This is what we've been waiting for.
Ultimate.
You know what? I'm not going to correct my spelling of them either or ask you how it is. Here we go. Okay, so first results are in. Oh, Matt, you are the clear winner of this. You've done it again. So Demonette was 20,000. And Sister of Battle Nude was 381,000.
Where's all my chaos brethren?
Well, there you have it. Thanks everyone for listening. That's been another episode of the Large Blast podcast. Say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
I'm gonna go watch that live action double-ended dildo that was released a few months ago with Demonette and a Sister of Battle.
Hell
Pure
yeah.
heresy.
Can you send me a link?
Yeah, no worries.